Speaker Pelosi, you resisted calls for the impeachment of President Bush in 2006 and President Trump following the Mueller report earlier this year. This time is different. Why did you oppose impeachment in the past? And what is your obligation to protect our democracy from the actions of our president now?
Thank you. Thank you for bringing up the question about, because when I became Speaker the first time, there was overwhelming call for me to impeach President Bush on the strength of the war in Iraq, which I vehemently opposed. And again, I said at other places, that was my wheelhouse. I was intelligence. I was the ranking member on the Intelligence Committee, even before I became part of the leadership of Gang of Four. So I knew there were no nuclear weapons in Iraq. It just wasn't there. They had to show us, they had to show the Gang of Four all the intelligence they had. The intelligence did not show that that was the case. So I knew it was a misrepresentation to the public. But having said that, it was, in my view, not a grounds for impeachment.
Now keep it banging like a shotgun. We in the war before we fall. Now if the time of work is late, I'm coming in, I'm here with God. Now keep it banging like a shotgun. We in the war before we fall. Now I'm the time of work to talk about.
Hello and welcome to From Right to Red. I'm Craig.
And I'm Paul.
And today we want to talk with you about some myths around the Iraq War, specifically the Iraq War that started in 2003. Not any of the other things that could technically be classified as the Iraq War. So, but yeah, we're going to get into all that. We're going to talk a little bit about that stuff. But first, I wanted to get your take on something, Paul. I was reading in the news the other day. Apparently, the fires in Hawaii were actually caused by a Chinese direct energy weapon. Did you hear it? Did you hear about that?
I have heard so many different ones. I definitely heard that one because
Right.
it's got to be China somehow.
It's gotta be, dude.
That's of course a fire in Hawaii had to have been China. That makes the most sense.
Definitely.
Also, like, one time I saw someone post that with a picture of one house that didn't get burnt down, and they said this must be the extra rich person, and they made sure it didn't burn down their house because all the houses around it were burnt down.
Sure.
So that means
Definitely.
China did it somehow.
Definitely. Yeah.
Because one of the houses didn't burn.
See, I think that, you've heard about the Evergrande Chinese real estate collapse, right? See, this is China. They're wiping out all that real estate there so that when it gets rebuilt, they can bid on the development contracts, trying to puff up their Evergrande business. That's what's going on.
Yeah, because I heard that too. They're already giving people offers, and it hasn't even been a week since their house burnt down. They're already offering me pennies on the dollar for what it's worth.
Yep.
Yeah.
Could also be Jewish space lasers again.
I mean, it's one of the two. If it's not China, it's definitely the Jews somehow. It's
oh Lord.
That's fun.
The wildfires are it's pretty scary. They were it's a lot. There's a bunch of them popped off in Canada now too.
Yeah, it's
since Hawaii.
It's definitely a natural disaster that is just terrifying. Of like, we've known for a long time these fires happen, and it's never any less scary when it happens. Of like, oh, everything's burning. I guess I just run.
Have you ever been in a wildfire like that at all? Like a serious one? Have you been nearby one before?
Yeah, I have.
Have you? I have not. What was that experience like?
Very recently, up
You don't have to say directly where if you
You
don't
know
want to.
where. You know where I was.
Yeah.
Vacationing. And it was really bad around there this year. And there was a point they like shut a bunch of roads down, wouldn't even let you go certain places. And I kind of got trapped unless I wanted to take an hour ride the wrong way to get around it.
Right. I watch these videos online that are like of the wildfires. The ones that always make me the most curious are the ones where it's like somebody driving and the fire is like coming down a hill or like through the meadow over there, and everything's real black and dark, even though it's supposed to be daylight. And there's just like this little ring of fire that's like coming towards them really slowly, and it's like not very tall. And I'm always just like thinking in my head, like something must not be coming through properly on the camera, because the people that are driving are just like panicking and freaking the shit out. But I'm watching the camera and I'm just like, that's just like a little ring of fire moving slowly. So like, something else must be really putting the vibe off that's just not coming through on those videos.
Well, yeah, when it's like in the wild grass and stuff instead of the trees, it's a lot shorter fire, man.
I know.
But once that reaches your house and goes into your entire house, I'm sure it's a different story.
Totally. That makes sense.
But
sounds like a conspiracy.
I think the biggest thing I remember was, man, it was hard to breathe. Like, there was just so much smoke in the air. It was awful. Besides the smoke I was putting in my lungs anyway.
This is a good idea. You were lighting them up while it was lighting up.
Well, that. Yeah. I mean, if the whole world's going to burn, I'm going to burn. You know, like, let's do it.
Definitely.
Smoke them if you got them, man.
All right. What else we got? Anything else good going on?
Speaking of the Twin Towers, I just watched a good movie.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. Have you ever seen, it's called The Walk?
I don't think I caught that one.
It's
The Walk.
Someone tight ropes between the two towers, and like,
is that the documentary one?
And yeah, and the story was actually like, it ended up being so good that I'm like, man, I can't wait for the sequel.
It's oh God.
The sequel's gonna be
Solitary
great.
Climb. Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome.
But like, it was weird because it was just like the whole movie.
What year did that take place? Like, generally, that when he actually did The Walk?
Definitely pre-2001.
That's a good start. That's a good start. We've narrowed that down.
I don't remember.
Was it like 80s, 90s kind of vibe?
I feel like
or
it was like
70s, 60s.
I feel like it was like 80s vibes, I thought, but it was actually like just super weird to be staring at the two towers for a whole movie, though.
Right, it's kind of trippy.
It was really weird, and I don't know. Sometimes you just watch things that you normally wouldn't, and it ends up being good. It was one of those.
Yeah,
but it also, like, we can't have a sequel, and I want one.
Yeah,
like,
well, what would he do in the sequel? Would it be like the easy one where he's like trying to run across, and they call it the run instead of the walk? Or would it be
the run?
Or would it be like the hang, and he has to like climb, hang over,
like a monkey climbing a rope,
like a monkey climb a rope? Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know because like you can't just do the walk again.
Maybe he's got to like moonwalk.
Yeah,
he's got to moonwalk the whole way
with a child.
Absolutely.
Why wouldn't he have a child, right? Got to up the ante, dude. You can't do the same thing, you know?
Oh, man.
Sheesh.
Almost as cool as Eric Clapton. Man, that's too old for a relevant joke now. People don't even know that song anymore.
I know, people. the old baby out the balcony.
Hey, sometimes it happens, man.
It created a banger, so
I mean,
worth it.
I mean,
Oh,
I
that's
mean,
horrible.
that
You
child
know.
paid the price just for inspiration, and
Right.
you can put a real tangible dollar amount on that kid's life now, and it's the
You
amount
can.
of
We
money
can
he made
literally-
from that song.
Yeah, we can look it up. It's a privilege in our type of society. That's a real privilege,
Yeah, I want to know how much that child was worth.
Well, fantastic.
To the penny.
Let me get to the books here real quick. Oh, that's amazing. I tried to remind myself multiple times, and I already forgot. We need to talk about the Patreon.
Yeah, the Patreon act.
Right now there is like nothing on Patreon, but we're gonna start doing a little hit up our Patreon at the beginning of every episode just in case. So it's only $3 right now to subscribe, and we're very forward about the fact that there is no benefit right now as of yet.
Other than making us very happy.
Right. If you feel like just being a good, good brother, a good comrade, whatever you want to call yourself, and hit us up with some, a little $3 subscription on our Patreon. It is patreon.com/from right to red. All of your donations are going to be going to helping us get better hardware. Focus in on the things that we need to do. We're
And for the right
I don't wanna
price,
spoil-
Craig will show you his hardware.
Right. I don't want to spoil too much. We don't have any tiers or anything, like I said right now, but there will be a tier that allows you to rent out one of Paul's extra bedrooms in his home. So that's coming. Wait for it. All right. And if you get in early right now, maybe we'll, pop your name up to the top of the list a little bit.
Yeah. Help me fulfill
we
that
control the
dream
strings.
of being a landlord, essentially.
Exactly.
Like getting that
yeah.
going. Cause that would be a super cool thing to be.
Right. It's going to be like a different kind of power dynamic though, Paul, because the tier is only going to be like $100 a month, and that person's going to get, they're getting a lot of value out of that $100 a month, getting a free room.
Oh, plus they don't even know what kind of benefits will be coming in that room.
Yeah. Let's. Paul's trying to get canceled right away.
No, you have to consent to it first, so it's fine.
Okay.
I have
fair.
I have the document written up and everything.
That's good. All right. So with that out of the way, we won't talk about our patreon.com/from right to red anymore. But there it is. We do have a big topic, right? There's like a lot of ins and outs to the Iraq war of 2003. But what we wanted to kind of do here is talk about some of the things like, Paul and I are pretty passionate about Iraq. So we bring up this conversation sometimes. It comes up a lot in our circles, and the people that we hear from, the vast majority of people I think have kind of moved on to the point where they're like, okay, we know it wasn't something that we should have done, just like full stop, which is great. But we do still hear from, from people that are to the right a little bit, or maybe even some that are in the center, that there were, it might have not been WMDs, but it might have been something else. So, get rid of Saddam. It might have been good because of this or that, or whatever, kind of little myth. So we want you to think about this is kind of like a Mythbusters type episode. We're going to go through some of those myths that we hear about why Iraq is in some way redeemable, the Iraq War of 2003. And try and like talk through those a little bit, see if we can change the minds, see if, we can get you to see the full picture of why that's just not the case. And, in order to do that, unfortunately, we do have to do a little bit of history. 'Cause like, I'm going to be talking about this theme on the show a lot, but a lot of like the way history works and the way that you understand conflicts and the results is about where you start looking, like what time do you start looking. So we can't give you a full history of Iraq, obviously, in 10 minutes, but we can try and give just a brief overview of some of the main important points that would lead up to where we ended up in 2003. So hopefully that makes sense. Paul, do you want to start it off, or what do you want to do?
Sure.
It's up to you.
A really interesting place for us to start, but it's kind of a good start for America's, I guess, involvement. But 14th of July revolution, which really could be called the 1958 Iraqi military coup, which was the first of a few coups that were to come.
Right.
Toppling of the king, which I wish I could pronounce his name right. I'm not even going to do it wrong. I can't remember.
King Faisal.
King Faisal. I couldn't remember.
Yeah.
But
That's
they
right.
overthrew the kingdom of Iraq and established the Iraqi Republic, which really just ruined what they were in the middle of trying to do at the time. So they had just established the Hashemite Arab Federation between Iraq and Jordan like 6 months earlier, and that was not going to happen now. Saddam was recruited by the CIA before the coup in an attempt to assassinate
Qasem.
I wish I could remember
I think
how to
that's
pronounce
the best
these.
way to pronounce it.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, he had allied with communists after overthrowing
Faisal.
Faisal. Yeah.
There you go.
But Saddam flees to Egypt, where he's in frequent contact with U.S. intelligence at that time.
Right. So I should have probably put a note beforehand. I'm sorry. I want to kind of, while we're going through this history of Iraq, we also want to touch on to like where Saddam was and like what the United States relationship was to him as we go through this history. And I think that's important for understanding 2003, because a lot of that had to do with Saddam and his relationship to the people of Iraq and the United States. And there's also like one of the end myths that kind of come out about why Iraq was a good thing, you know, America was doing good, was because we toppled Saddam. But if we can see like the trajectory of how Saddam got there in the first place, it doesn't make sense that that's like, yes, obviously it's a good thing, but like we're the reason that it was even a thing to begin with.
We
propelled so that
him
makes it
upward.
just like, yeah, exactly.
Like,
so it's silly. So we're going to touch on that as we go through. We're going to kind of be like, okay, and this is what was going on with Saddam. The next one, after, so what you have, like the dynamics of the revolution there, the Iraqi military coup in 1958, is you have this new thing coming through in Iraq. It's this Iraqi Republic, and they come through, they overthrow a kingdom, and they're trying to figure out, who to ally with and how to make things happen. They ally with the communists. The CIA doesn't like that. Boom, Saddam, that kind of thing was what was going on. So he was like our guy, right? The next piece that I think is important is the Ramadan coup. And that was a Ba'athist overthrow of Iraq that was supported, entirely by the CIA. Before, during, after, the CIA was involved in this overthrow of the Iraqi Republic. And this kind of opened the door for Saddam to eventually take power, because that was the regime, that was the party that he was a part of, that Ba'athist regime in Iraq. So on top of that, you also get this part where there's like a Marxist split between Syrian Baathists and the like more anti-Marxist Iraqi Ba'athist party, which is kind of like a little bit of a side note, but I think it plays an important role in kind of what's going on here. Saddam is kind of pushed through this Iraqi Ba'athist party, pushed through by the CIA with help from the CIA, and then suddenly they're splitting off from their Syrian party that had some Marxist tendencies to it. So I think that's kind of important to note.
Yeah, because it definitely also makes it clear, even all the way back then, the CIA's intent of anything
Right.
going towards Marxism at all. Just we're not
Exactly.
siding with that.
So the next piece I think that is kind of relevant is the July 17th revolution, 17 July revolution. If you're keeping count now, this is, you know, the third coup in which like Saddam was in some way involved, you know, within I don't even know, like not even 20 years or so. Also backed by the United States, and this one was kind of more of like an internal coup almost. It was the consolidation of Iraqi Ba'athist control of Iraq, and it was, you know, a non-Ba'athist purge took place kind of like immediately after this revolution. So anybody who was still in Iraqi government that was non-Ba'athist or not Ba'athist aligned appropriately, they were purged by Saddam himself. And if you haven't seen this video before, I don't know if you have, Paul, I'm sure you have.
Oh yeah.
You can actually go and watch this video because he had it videotaped of him like standing up at center stage, smoking a fat cigar while calling people's names and then being like escorted out of the building. It's it's very chilling. It's very scary. And I have a completely different perspective on it when I watch it now, knowing that we did that.
Yeah.
You know, like we did that. We knew that this was a consequence of our actions and we went forward with that. So it's really difficult to watch. If you haven't watched that video, maybe we'll link it in the description here for you to check out. But things kind of like changed after the Ba'athists took control in Iraq, you know, for all of the negative that can be said for Saddam Hussein, and I will say as much negative as humanly possible, he did understand that his power in the country was dependent on having the population be happy with them in their position, at least as much as possible. And he did that in a lot of ways, you know, by cracking down and, you know, all the horrible things that he did. But he also did it by things like nationalizing their international oil exports and trying to return that money to the Iraqi people, going through rapid modernization and, you know, building the country up. And it really quickly became, you know, one of the most advanced societies in the Middle East.
But
in
that
those ways.
That oil makes you kind of a target.
Yes, it certainly does. Do you want to talk about the next piece that we think is important there?
Sure thing, because it is the Iran-Iraq war, a little project Saddam was working on. So really, this war put the U.S. in a tough position between supporting Iraq, which had begun programs of nationalization, and revolutionary Iran. So we played both sides so that we always would end up on top, you know, just in good American fashion, openly supporting Iraq with weapons and chemicals for genocide, while simultaneously secretly supporting Iran through the Iran-Contra scandal, which I think most people know about at this point, are pretty aware of what that is. But essentially, it's that, like, we sold weapons to one side and openly supported them, and then in secret we're definitely giving weapons to the other side just because it was all a money grab. As long as that war continued, they were making money from both sides. So that, and on top of that, using the funding to, you know, fund secret operations in other areas of the world, which we'll cover later. But for this topic, what they did with the money is pretty cool too. So Operation Desert Storm. All I put on here was a quote that makes it very clear the entire stance of how we felt at that time. Because January 17th, 1991, Colin Powell had a quote about it a month later. Our strategy to go after this Iraqi army is very simple. First off, we're going to cut it off. Then we're going to kill it.
There you go. Now
That's it.
This was in
That's his whole
This was
feeling.
in 1991. So, like, just to give you guys some scope again of what we're talking about here, in 1958, we were supporting Saddam, pushing him through all the way up the ranks of power, all the way through the 17th July Revolution. We were backing him, supporting him. He was our man. The Iran-Iraq war, we were backing him publicly. He was our man. And suddenly by 1991, our strategy is to go after this Iraqi army. We're going to cut it off and then we're going to kill it. We had completely flipped on Saddam. And if we look at like materially what had changed since 1958 until then, they got rid of communism in the country. You know, they stomped that out. They started torturing, executing, coups, bullying, all of this stuff. All of that was fine. All of that was peaches. And then at some point, they start nationalizing oil interests. Then they're in another war with Iran, Iraq, and you can see the support is already fading as we're, you know, secretly supporting their enemy in the war. And then by 1991, we're openly at war with them. So I think the pivotal piece there is if you are a comprador for America, you know, the U.S. empire, never nationalize your oil. That's going to be a rule that you should keep in mind.
Because that's just like, I don't know, that's kind of why I paused for a second of like, yep. And when you have that oil, kind of makes you a target of like everyone. That was the most valuable thing at that time for anyone to have and have control over. And as soon as they nationalized it, it's weird how things changed. Like, and
so with
you can like essentially raise him. And I mean, I don't want to use that another term almost, but grooming is like they literally made him what they wanted him to be. And then we're like, oh no, get this guy out of here. Like he's messing with our money.
Right.
Like, oh my God. Yeah.
Nothing in our government is not about grooming, folks. That's just the way it goes.
Really though? It always comes back to that somehow.
It does, you know. Operation Desert Storm, though, basically what kind of went down is I'm sure most people listening to this this point have some idea.
I think we're getting close enough to have some more people remember these.
Yeah, with that, it was Iraq wanted some oil from Kuwait. Kuwait wanted some oil from Iraq. Iraq invades Kuwait, and up to this point, they had full support of the United States the entire time. So they go to invade Kuwait, you know, of course the U.S. is going to back us. But no, we absolutely did not. We immediately started bombing and destroying them as much as humanly possible. So,
and they did. I mean, I know we're going to talk later on in time, but man, and that initial strike, even in 91, they didn't like carefully drop a couple bombs here and there. They just were dropping everywhere. Didn't matter if they were civilians. It was brutal.
It was absolutely brutal. It was horrible. Operation Desert Storm, when was that Madeleine Albright video from? I'm blanking. You remember the one I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking about. I don't remember when that was.
Oh, that was in 1998. So, very cool. Very cool.
Wow.
Wow. So like 8 years after we still had sanctions that were killing 500,000 Iraqi children. And when asked about it, Madeleine Albright said that was a cost she was willing to pay. So
yeah, over
just brutal
oil.
Right.
Like
completely insane.
Wild.
And so then after Operation Desert Storm, we continued those sanctions, like I said, that were absolutely horrible and devastating. And Paul, like you mentioned, during Desert Storm, we really bombed them back to the Stone Age, like everybody was saying at the time.
Yep.
Like I said, that earlier, they were one of the most advanced countries in the Middle East before the war, and after the war, it was a completely different scenario there. It was really, really horrendous. And then these, American zeitgeist kind of moved on. The sanctions were still ripping through the country. People were still dying there like crazy, but we just moved on, and that was kind of it for a while. Then 2001 happens, 9/11 happens, we're in Afghanistan, and there was a very clear attempt by the administration to kind of make that connection of like, yeah, it's not Afghanistan, but in some way, and it's not the Taliban, but in some way, Saddam is responsible for this, which is insane when you think about the history that we just did. Like he was our guy. We loved him. We were supplying him with weapons, and then we turn on him, and now they're trying to like say he was involved in 9/11. It's right. Insane.
And especially when we've already invaded Afghanistan, that was a weird time to just be in America, because obviously, especially that early on, everyone's like, well, we were attacked for kind of the first time since, I don't even know the last time before that. Was it 1812? That we were attacked on our
Pearl Harbor
soil. Oh, I guess Pearl Harbor.
Right. Yeah.
So like it was a weird.
Big ups to Hawaii. They're getting it left and right in this episode.
Jeez. Man, but I love the idea of Hawaii, even though I've never been there. It looks beautiful.
It looks great.
But
it looks like a good
they're having a
for
rough
Chinese
go.
direct energy weapon.
Well, yeah. And what if we got to the end of the episode just like, actually, in the end, it was China the whole time. They were using energy weapons.
Right. Yeah. They are actually in charge of all of this.
But like that feeling of we were attacked on our own land, like everyone was in full support of not war, but retaliation of whoever did this to us, we're going to get them.
Right.
And so it's so weird, like knowing everyone was in that fear state when they started pushing we need to go to Iraq and it's all Saddam. And it's like, you're in that state. You're like, yeah, whatever you guys say, like it was, we need to do something, like we need to handle this. And like, I think that made us just susceptible to like, all right, whatever the answer is, just go do it. Like, so I don't blame anyone who stood behind it at the time, because I mean, it's hard not to. It's
if you look at polling at the time, I mean, there was massive support for action, and you look back on it, it's just like, I can't believe that we all had this. It was like a mass like psychosis event.
Yeah.
Where nobody was being rational. Well, I shouldn't say that, because we do say this a lot, and it's very true. Like, it did have a ton of support, but simultaneously there were also like the largest anti-war protests in the history of the world taking place.
Yep.
So there was a huge contingent of people that were right from the beginning. I wish that contingent were 30 times larger. I wish it had been 30 times larger. I wish that I was in that contingent, because I could look back and say I was right, which I love to do. But I was wrong.
But
I was on the wrong side of that.
Kind of refreshing to be wrong at times. It really helps you remember, like, hey, we're all humans and can be wrong at times. But I'm more scared of people who won't admit when they're wrong. Like, it's good.
It's an opportunity for growth.
It's good to look back and be able to say I was right. But like, if you grow from it when you are wrong, it's very different than our government's history of just doing the same wrong over and over.
Over and over and over.
It's just but like at that time, I understand why you would be not protesting. But when the protests got huge, it was at a specific time, like when we were making changes to our strategy and going different places. And I will never forget being a very young kid at that age, like seeing on TV people in Britain protesting. And at that point, I was young enough to not understand like other countries were allied with us fighting.
Yeah.
So they would be protesting too. And I remember that hit me where I'm like, people in Britain are even like protesting this. And that stuck with me for some reason. I don't know why. It's like just a clip of people protesting in Britain of like, hey, we don't agree. We don't think Saddam's the guy. Like, what are you doing? Stop. You know,
remember,
our innocent children are going. Like, what?
Do you remember freedom fries?
Oh boy, do I.
Did I just unlock a hidden memory?
I forgot about that. My house was one of those that this house eats freedom fries, you know?
Oh man.
We don't eat the French fries. Wasn't there something
the
else?
Psychosis was so deep.
There was another one.
Psychosis was so deep in the United States that because France didn't want to join us in an illegal invasion,
that's not how it was presented to them.
It wasn't. I might be being a little bit biased here, but because France didn't. It's very true. Because France didn't want to join us in a very obviously illegal invasion. Our
get ready to
Congress
pussies.
Fucking French pussies. Nothing but puss.
Dude, half my life I thought all the French were pussies, man.
So coward ass pussies. We eat freedom fries. Our congressional cafeteria in Washington D.C., which is ostensibly, this is made up of grown adults that work and eat there. They renamed the French fries to freedom fries as a form of protest against the French.
Like, we're still gonna eat this awesome idea you had that's named after you, but like we're gonna call it our own thing.
Right.
Like you had this great idea. We're still gonna eat it. Like
right. Like if there is any better evidence that America was experiencing a traumatic mass psychosis event, please come forward with it. Because I think that really takes the cake. But yeah, there was a lot of myths and lies going around. What are some of your favorites, your favorite myths about the invasion of Iraq?
I am starting with the one I even wrote at the top because it was the one I still heard a week ago. Bush did the best he could with the intel he was being given. Like, it was essentially like, oh, well, we can't blame Bush. And for context, I was talking about some recent events with people getting indicted for certain things they may or may not have done. We'll see. Mm-hmm. It's still all alleged at this point. But we know
alleged.
We know what happened.
Yeah.
I mean, if I could get peed on in Russia, I would too.
Anyway, look, we know. Hey, we know what happened. Trump won.
But like that, it was just all a defense of like, well, you can't blame Bush. And it's like, you think for a second that you're going to be president of the United States and someone hands you intel to like fight a war over, and you're going to not even glance at it and be like, well, they said it was cool, so we're doing it. Like,
right.
Obviously there's no way he could have not known. Like, he would have caught on, even if they were hiding it from him. Like, he knew.
I mean, there was a report that came from, so in the lead up to all this, right, there was weapons inspections, and the whole thing was, the whole like drum up started with like, oh, he's getting ready to attack. We're not sure if he's in some way related with Al-Qaeda and 9/11, and he's building a nuclear weapons program, and nobody believed that really. So they switched it to WMDs after some polling.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Because it sounds better, and weapons of mass destruction can be a lot of things.
Right. So we're just, just weapons of mass destruction. We don't know exactly what, but we need to get some weapons inspectors over there just to make sure. And so we sent weapons inspectors, not the United States. It was
The UN weapons inspectors.
UN weapons inspectors. Yep. I think there was IAEA or something involved at some point too. I don't know.
Yeah, something was.
But one of them, I can't remember if it was the UN or the other inspectors that were out there. One of them, Saddam was originally kind of like standoffish about it because notoriously these weapons inspectors are a vector for espionage on another country, right? So he's a little standoffish, but ultimately allows them to come into the country. And it turns out, who would have ever thunk it, that there was some espionage taking place with these inspections by us.
Yeah, whoever would have thought?
I know, it's amazing. So he got this intelligence report, and I'd have to look up the name, but he got this intelligence report that like clearly outlined like we cannot find any weapons of mass destruction or anything to build weapons of mass destruction. Like the only thing that's there is the stuff that we know about that he decommissioned that we gave him in the 80s during the Iran-Iraq war. Like that's all we have. And so we know that he didn't do the best with the intel that he was given.
Yeah.
Because he was given that intel.
Yeah.
He
was
like
given the intel. Like,
yeah.
I mean,
this isn't a matter of opinion at this point. like we can see the intel that he was given, and we can know like, oh, based on this intel, that was not the best he could have done.
And I know we'll probably reference it and tell people to listen to Blowback more than once in this. One of the best podcasts I have ever listened to be honest. Like,
right.
Thank you for that suggestion. But you're
welcome.
Opening clip of the one about Iraq is, if anyone listening to this has not heard it, it's the skit with H. John Benjamin.
It's a better podcast.
Playing
you should
Saddam.
Stop this one and go listen to that.
Oh
one.
yeah, like they're phenomenal. Seriously, they're amazing. If you haven't listened, they'll teach you way more than we ever could.
Right.
But like that skit that they have at the beginning of like pretending Saddam and Bush are just on a phone call. They do a great job though of like giving you that feel of Saddam being like, wait, what? Are you serious about this? Like me and your dad were friends.
Right.
Like, and he's like, yeah. And if we don't find any bombs, we're going to come in and inspect with explosions. Like, and that's like those jokes that they make in there. It's like, now looking back, that is how it feels like. Oh, well, even if we don't find them, we're doing this. Like, yeah, I'm totally serious. This is happening. Like, whether anyone likes it or not, we're doing it.
Yep. It's happening.
Yeah, like we're going to do it. A fun one on the list. The yellow cake.
Yeah, this one got turned into a pretty popular skit.
I didn't know what yellow cake was until this.
But suddenly yellow cake was the scariest thing.
Knows yellow cake. Yeah, the skit about that is ridiculous.
That was,
but
Dave Chappelle, right?
Yeah. But that whole thing of them getting yellow cake, and it turned out to be so incredibly false that it wasn't even like bad intel. It was just made up intel. Like just made up completely.
Just whole cloth.
Like just completely fabricated. And then of course, didn't they blame it like Britain gave us that intelligence? Like it's their fault. Like
passing the bug off.
If you took one look at it, you would know. Me with not knowing what any of that stuff looks like would be able to be like, wait a minute, something's off here. Like,
dude, how cucked are all these other countries?
Oh,
like, we're literally like, no, we're going in and we're doing it a coalition of the willing. Yeah, and we get, we bully all these other countries into supporting us. What they obviously know, because they have the same intelligence as us.
Oh yeah,
like they know all this is fucking bullshit.
But they know
And
who
we're just
daddy is.
Yeah, come on, my little bitch countries. We're doing this.
Which my favorite.
and you're gonna take the fall if we need to.
Yeah.
Like if we're wrong about yellow cake, it's on you, buddy.
Yeah, like that. My favorite is looking at the actual numbers and seeing the countries that are like, well, since we have to, here's 80 dudes. Like, well, we'll send you 80 people. Are they trained?
Right.
Yeah, they totally are trained. Here's 80 people.
Definitely,
We're part of the
dude.
coalition.
What do you? Some of those countries, they gave such tiny numbers, and you have to imagine, like, what do you think the selection process looked like for that? Do you think they were sending their best, or do you think that it was like all right, Greg,
Yeah.
he's a little slow.
Yeah,
So
like
we're gonna,
he's getting shipped out tomorrow.
yeah. He before this, we had him cleaning the latrines.
Yeah.
And he really wasn't even doing very well at that.
Yeah.
So
If anything, it was worse after he left. He enjoyed
He's
it
in the
way too
coalition
much,
now.
if you know what I mean.
yeah.
But
If I were those countries, that's what I'd be doing. I
Yeah.
wouldn't be sending my best out there, because I know this is bullshit.
But we should
Yeah.
also, on that topic, just touch on how many people were coerced to be part of the coalition as well, or paid off, or money like loans forgiven that they owed. Of essentially, we will pay you to just be on this side.
Right. We had basically constructed the world's most legitimate mercenary organization to go bully a third world country
Yeah.
that we had already completely obliterated in 1991.
Yeah.
So
And if you were a country that had any debt at all to the U.S., you could be sure the U.S. was going to come knocking and be like, hey, we can forgive all that debt if you have a bunch of people come die in this war.
let's talk about some refinancing options.
Yeah.
How do you guys feel about taking out a little
A second
little
mortgage
home
on your
equity on
your
this?
country.
Yeah, on your country.
Actually, we'll do a
Let's talk about
reverse mortgage.
We're gonna get you cash now.
Yeah. Yes. That was just. But the rebranding that you mentioned before was very key. Of like, or all the branding and rebranding of things of like that yellow cake. Who in the world had ever said yellow cake before that was out there?
Right.
We don't want the smoking gun to be a mushroom cloud. Like
What was oh, that was good.
That one was like-
yeah, say that one again.
Like, I will never forget seeing Bush say that. Because, in my house, if Bush was talking on the TV, everyone stopped and we were all sitting there waiting. And just...
Saluting.
And and like, just... I will never
They
forget...
had to be at parade rest.
I will just never forget that of Bush just... We don't want... And he even sounded like he was trying to remember what they had rehearsed for him to say at the time of we don't want the smoking gun to come in the form of a mushroom cloud.
Oh God, he hit it so good too. That clip.
Did I do all right?
It's such.
Did I do
you
all
did
right?
Great.
That was a pretty good
You
impression.
did great, and it totally just reminded me of his actual clip. How dramatic,
Dude, that unlocked
Bush was a
your memory
dramatic
of
dude.
that, right? That
Yeah,
unlocked like
big time.
him saying that, and you felt something
Yeah.
at that time of like, yeah, like we don't want to wait till it's too late. Like all of their
I can't believe
branding was, oh,
Yeah, it was on point.
Now
I
watch
can't believe
this
I came into this
drive.
episode without. Now watch this drive. I can't believe I came into this episode without brushing up on my Bush impression.
oh,
I'm such an idiot.
I know I'm
I
not
don't even
good
wanna try it
at
right now.
impressions, so I'm just gonna go for them, and they're gonna be bad. But
Yeah,
I
that's true.
had
I
his
guess it doesn't really
timing
matter.
down, and that was what was important about him saying that. Like he was so serious.
Yeah,
But then we'd get that.
You
We were
fool me
used to
once,
that like almost goofy side
yeah.
of Bush more, and then that serious side came out, it was so dramatic that
Oh, it was amazing.
he must have been top notch, like in plays in his high school or something, man.
People talk about how articulate Obama was, and they like to talk about how inarticulate Bush was. But and granted, there's like you can find a lot of clips of Bush like stepping over his own words and stuff like that, yada yada yada. But like in terms of style, Obama had a style that was really great for like the things he was talking about. It was like hopeful, you know.
Yeah.
He's like everybody, yeah,
Good
it was great. It was
charisma,
good. It was hopeful.
like-
Everything was good, you know.
Yeah.
We're getting there. And Bush's though, like his style when he wanted to be serious, it was way better than Obama's
Yeah.
because he would do the dramatic, like you said.
And something
We don't want
about
the
that Texas
smoking
accent.
gun to come in the form of a Texas cloud.
Yeah.
Or a mushroom cloud. You said Texas and I said Texas.
But like
In the form of a mushroom cloud.
something about
Yeah,
it,
he was,
like that when that accent gets that serious and like a guy that seems kind of silly and like you could, you know, share jokes with, and then all of a sudden
Yeah.
he's getting that deep and serious, and you're like, oh man, like. But
Right.
imagine like all of a sudden you're a wartime president out of nowhere. Like he probably, like, I don't know. I don't think he was as dumb as people portrayed him to be at all. But
No.
being bad and stumbling over your words, public speaking, doesn't mean you're not intelligent. It just means
Right.
he messed up talking sometimes. Like, and it was funny. It was funny to watch, but like, he knew what he was doing. He knew what all of this
Absolutely.
was about the whole time. He wasn't.
And you know, I this wasn't on our notes or anything, but I do want to make this point that Michael Parenti talks about that exact. I know,
God,
dude, you're shaking your head.
You're just. I mean, I like Parenti too, but you're just like. I feel like you wake up thinking about Parenti. You go to bed
I do, but no, all
dreaming
right,
about
all right.
Parenti. You got a poster of Parenti on your ceiling, so when you lay in bed at night.
Why are you gonna tell people about the poster, dude? That's too far.
Yeah.
Okay.
You did share that with me, and
Right now, that was in confidence.
Yeah, that
all
was-
right. It's on the ceiling. I gotta say goodnight to him. It's no big deal. Okay. No, I'll try and say it without mentioning his name. If you think that Bush or Reagan is stupid, you're missing everything. These people are not stupid. They got exactly what they wanted in these situations. Like, yes, like you said, yes, they stumble over their words. You know, especially Reagan at the end there was was probably not there all the time. But like they were activated and they executed on behalf of their class interests. And their class interests were, you know, making sure that the cost of this war is paid by the people, both in human lives and in tax. And the profits of that war, even though they were less than what we spent, were delivered to their class, which was the owner class. You know, people that,
Like,
for instance,
maybe
but
it's weird. I feel like it's something maybe Dick Cheney worked for at one point.
yeah,
I can't. Oh, maybe like
Look.
Halliburton profited crazy amounts right after he quit and became vice president. I don't know.
Right,
Like,
look,
that class did
I'm
pretty
not
well.
I'm not saying this is like a cheesy 80s spy novel with very predictable plot points, but the vice president of our country like literally was the owner of an oil company or the CEO or whatever. His interests were with the oil owning class.
Oh yeah.
And, like, come on.
And like
that's like so
as
ridiculous.
soon as he leaves and becomes vice president, suddenly that company is like growing in profit faster than any other company in the world. And you're like, wait a minute,
right.
this isn't adding up. Like,
That's
Dick
not
Cheney.
even to mention the conspiracies that I have about the off the book stuff that was taking place there, like, you know, protection of poppy fields and in Afghanistan more so, but like that kind of stuff, like drug trade, like the kind of stuff that was kind of happening on the side, that was definitely taking place.
Oh,
in my
yeah.
opinion. I don't know if anything definitive has come out there, but
that's why
yeah,
all that opium did so well over here was because they
right.
dude, they made so much money once they went over and they secure these fields, and then pharmaceutical companies sell them to all these Americans
Yeah.
with their oil
it's,
and yeah.
It's fun. It's fun. Aren't we having
Yeah,
fun?
yeah. Are we having fun yet? It's a cool story.
Yeah. All right. So that was good though. That to bring it all back to your point that started this is their branding was on point. Like they had the messaging down. They had the campaigning down to get this war started. And even though everybody was pointing directly at the cracks that were there in the story, it was just delivered too good. Like, it was just going to happen. And you can even look on that, like I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but there's polling out there before the invasion. You can find it. There's polling that shows, that there were questions being asked about, like, would you invade Iraq if they had nuclear weapons? And the polling was like through the roof, and then the polling was like, okay, would you invade them if they had weapons of mass destruction? And like, do you believe they had weapons of mass destruction, or do you believe they had nuclear weapons? And you can watch, like, in real time, the administration, when you track those polls versus the public statements that were being made, you can see them react to the change in public opinion about, like, what phrases and words to use. Their messaging and branding was so on point.
Oh yeah.
It just nailed it,
Yeah. It was whoever ran that team was very good at their job, just on the wrong side.
Right. Now, luckily, Paul, out of all of this, the weapons that we were using in 2003 were smart weapons. So they were incapable. Yeah, they were incapable of harming civilians. Am I right? I'm getting that right.
Yeah,
right? They were incapable of. Yeah.
Yeah, they definitely said that those. Oh, actually, the words I used were, these new weapons mean less civilian casualties, or whatever those bitches said repeatedly, or before they repeatedly bombed civilians over and over and over and over and over again. Like, literally told all of us, like, oh, and you can even stand by the murders in this war. Like, it's only going to be the bad guys. And then, like, even our first, like, 4 attempts, they're like, we got, this guy is going to be here. And then turns out, nope, just like 100 civilians. Or my favorite one was that baby formula factory that they were like, definitely thought it was something else, even though it very clearly wasn't. That was strategic for a different reason, not because they thought the bad guys were there. Absolutely. That was the kind of things we chose to bomb with these smart weapons.
Right. They're very, very smart. You know what memory I have of whenever I hear the term smart weapons, I always think back to, like, one of the first times that was in my head. And I don't know if it was actually in the news report itself, but it brings me back to Dan Rather reporting on the opening ensemble of Operation Iraqi Freedom.
From CBS News headquarters in New York, here is Dan Rather.
It was just over 90 minutes beyond President Bush's deadline for Saddam Hussein to leave Iraq that U.S. warships and planes, there were F-117 stealth bombers involved, launched the opening salvo of Operation Iraqi Freedom. The attack came in waves, cruise missiles, followed by the F-117 stealth bombers with so-called bunker-busting bombs. Their target, a bunker believed to be sheltering what are called top leaders of the Iraqi regime. Now, this is what it looked and sounded like in Baghdad. It was this short, and this is what happened.
All right.
So, just to give you context, because that was still 2003, 2 when that was out.
That video came in 2003.
3. So
yeah,
I was 12. And
Yeah.
in the household I was in at that age, I still like Grand Theft Auto existed and was a cool new game. Like I'm talking the original. Like I wasn't allowed to play that because it had too much violence and blood. But if you think my whole family wasn't gathered around the TV seeing stuff like that, like it's a very weird thing because I don't remember being openly shown things like that ever in my life before. And then it was just right there on TV of like, look at us shooting these missiles. Like, it was wild. And like you, at that age, you remember that. As soon as I saw that clip start, I like felt it.
Yeah, it's something weird it's really surreal and almost like disassociating to watch something like that. And what I took away from that clip too, we're probably not gonna splice it in because it's really just audio of maybe we'll see. But what I took away from that is they really did their best to make it look as like peaceful of the start of a war as possible, which is so obviously Orwellian and weird.
Yeah, just like one ship firing is like all
one
by
ship
itself.
Firing what looks like it looks like flares basically, and then it cuts to like the exact opposite camera angle that you would want to be looking at if you wanted to actually see anything happening.
Yeah, where you see
it's
the
like
flashes.
a shot over Baghdad. Yeah, you see like the flashes, like all the explosions are happening like behind you. So they don't show anything. And even Dan Rather says like, this is how short it was and this is how quickly it passed by or whatever bullshit he says. And it's just like, oh yeah, okay, dude. Yeah. Like you're trying to convince us that this is like a peaceful entry into war. It's a war, dude.
Yeah.
You're showing us the start of a war and you're like trying to piss on our leg and tell us it's raining.
Right. Like
it's insane.
It's just downplayed of like to kind of, I think, to make the Americans forget almost that like what's happening when those bombs land is killing people like and blowing up their buildings. And it's like they're trying to make you forget about that aspect and just be like, look at how civilized we are. This one beautiful big ship firing from a distance. Like it's and it's just, it's not reality at all.
Definitely not. And you know what? This actually, you know what? I just figured out why I take such issue with this clip. It's like half psychotic. 'Cause it's like it's psychotic that you're showing us on TV the quote unquote opening salvo of Operation Iraqi Freedom. Like that's a psychotic thing to be showing people on primetime television. Yeah. But then you're like trying to hide it by like showing certain camera angles and talking about how quick and quiet it is or whatever. Right. So nobody likes somebody that's like halfway autistic. You know, you only like Rain Man because he's fully there. You know, he's all the way. So that's my issue is that they weren't more like they didn't lean in.
Oh
like, you don't get a movie made about you because like you don't like the way your fingernails feel sometimes and it makes you uncomfortable in social situations. No, that's not a movie, dog. You got to be able to count like 900 things at once. All right.
Yeah. Do you want Dustin Hoffman to play you in a movie or what? Like
seriously, well, pick it up, dude. Like that's why nobody will remember who you are, Dan Rather.
Yeah.
You're halfway autistic.
Yeah. Like
all right?
You're never going to have a movie made by Leonardo DiCaprio and Johnny Depp about you, you know, like
right.
It's never going to happen.
Yeah.
You got to be
next time,
all the way there.
Next time, if you don't strap a POV cam to an innocent Iraqi child, I'm not interested in watching.
But I want a GoPro strapped to the rocket as well, so we get both views as it's.
That's what I'm talking about.
You know, like as they collide.
See, we just talked about how great their branding was. Nah, these
They
guys,
could have been
I'm taking
better.
all that back.
Yeah.
It could have been better.
We-
There's so much better we could have done.
They should
All
have
right,
had
Dan
us
Rather,
be the
you really-
marketing team.
You flipped my script entirely on that with that horrible showing. Oh, God.
One I definitely want to bring up because I remember hearing it from people close to me a lot at that time. Like I said, I wasn't even a teenager yet. I was like coming into that age. So I was at a weird age to be having this like come into my brain. Like I understood a decent amount, but you're not old enough to fully understand. But I remember everyone talking about Saddam and Osama and like as if they were best friends and like having tea together out on the lawn and stuff. Like they did all of it together. They're working together, and like a little bit of research, and it's like even a couple years before that, it was very known that they disagreed on some things, and they were like, "Oh, we're not going to be able to get along." And they weren't like fighting wars against each other fully yet or anything like that, but like they weren't super good friends and they weren't working together. And we knew that.
Right.
Like our intelligence knew that. It was commonly known.
Yeah, wasn't there a quote about that?
Yeah, you want
About
me to
how
read it?
Yes. Yes.
Mutual
yes.
distrust and animosity between Saddam Hussein and Osama bin Laden made forging such a relationship highly improbable.
There you go.
This
And that was
uh
clearly, there was distrust and animosity between Saddam Hussein. Like,
yeah. And we knew.
And there's never been any credible link that came up. Like that stuff just like doesn't exist. And luckily, I don't really hear that one too much anymore.
I just remember hearing it a lot at the time.
Yeah.
Like, because certain ones
Yeah.
stick out, like in my memory
Certainly.
from that age of like, oh, I remember hearing that. Like, and that one I
Right.
definitely heard when I was younger. Like,
I heard a lot about look, everything you just said is totally true, but the upside, the upshot of all this is that we brought freedom and democracy and liberation to the Iraqi people.
is that
How do you
like
feel
still
about that?
pending? Like,
Right. Is
the
there,
progress bar is like stuck loading, like, because we didn't
Yeah.
do that yet. Still to this
Did
day.
you guys you shipped that, right? You got like a receipt for the shipping of the freedom
Yeah.
and the liberation?
yeah, we
Because we're gonna need like
sent that. You got
tracking
the
details,
order confirmation, right?
right?
It's
Right. And also like this is just silly on the face of it, right? Because like if we cared if Bush and the Bush administration cared one iota about the freedom, democracy, and liberation of the Iraqi people, they would not have spent all of this money and time since 1958 subverting Iraqi freedom, democracy, and liberation. Like, there were things that were happening that the Iraqi people wanted that we were stopping. And there was things that they didn't want to happen that we pushed forward. We did not give 1 cent or care about their sovereignty, what the people wanted whatsoever. Our goal during those years was Saddam was our guy. We're going to push him through as quickly as possible and get him in control of this country so that we can make as much money off the situation as possible, or, meet whatever kind of aims we had as far as anti-communism during the Cold War was concerned. So there's never like a point where we cared about that at all.
no. Also, I remember you commenting about taxpayers paying for the war, and I totally forgot to look it up then, and it's totally out of place to even throw it in here, but it was estimated $2 trillion of taxpayer money. So like, especially when I hear things from the right non-stop about taxes, and like that was one even when I was growing up and leaning right a lot. Like, I always thought, like, I'm not against the idea of taxes. I'm against what they use them for. Like, I get we're
Right.
going to pay taxes somehow. And if it goes to good things, I'm all for it. Like, you know, especially emergency services that get taxed. Like, yeah, I want them to show up when I need them. So I should make sure they exist. Like, but that, to think like those same people that are so worried about like a starving family using food stamps from their tax money is like, oh, but $2 trillion to go bomb innocent people over something they lied to us about. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
A lot
Let's
of
do
the
it.
a lot of the attack on the left from the right will is around taxes in some way, shape, or form, and like it's just silly because it's like I don't believe that taxes are good, and I don't believe that taxes are bad. I believe that taxes for good things that build society up in good ways are good.
Yeah.
And I think that taxes that disassemble society, destroy society, create chaos around the world, those are bad.
Yeah. like that's
it's not too hard to think about. Like, you got to move past the fact that because look, we're never going to live in a society where there's no taxes. So like,
yeah.
I mean, it's just, I mean, maybe, hopefully down the road, you know, I mean, in some far off utopia, you know, full communism is achieved, global communism. Great. That would be awesome. Stateless, moneyless, classless society. Awesome. I'm all for that. Let's push for it. But until then, we've got quite a bit of time left where we're going to have to pay some taxes. So like, at least just think about them in a reasonable way where like good taxes are good. Taxes for like local library and roads and police and firefighters, and you know, good stuff is good. You know, I would love to see it expanded to make even better things in society, you know, overhaul of our infrastructure, education, food, shelter, you know, these things that I think will help build our country and our society up in meaningful ways and give us a head start against people in, you know, elsewhere. You know, that's what the right wants, right? They want to be the greatest country on earth. Well, you know, you got to spend money to make money. Let's put some money into the society and make it the greatest society on earth. Boom. Easy.
Right? That's one that it's always seemed weird to me. Like the fact that even when I was on that side, I was like, well, it's silly to just hate all taxes. Like, it's the idea of like, hey, like I always think of things in weird ways. My brain is just different, but I think of it even at a small level of like, you and your friends all can't afford this one cool thing, but if you all chip in a little bit and agree it's a good thing for you guys to have, then you can buy it, but you never would get it on your own. So if you break it down that simply, like, we should have someone in town who is readily available to put out these fires, and then we can all chip in and make sure he's, you know, properly compensated for making sure we all don't burn alive. Like, it's, when you think about it, like, yeah, that makes sense. And it's just wild that we'll yell about the tiniest percentages in taxes on the right. And then when it comes to that of war, that like we're even realizing during the war, like, hey, something's up here. Like, what are we really fighting for? And no one ever says a word about that from the right of like, look at all my taxpayer money. Like, they'll complain about it in every other way it's used except that. And it's just insane to me. Like, you're not worried about that, especially when those weapons companies make enough to probably fund the war themselves anyway. Like, they're doing fine. They don't need our money. They're sending half of the troops are mercenaries anyway. Like, what are they using my money for in that? Like, it's
wild, dude.
And that is just weird to me, and has always been weird. I do have one other myth that I really want, just because it's funny to me, and another that I have held on to, of the mobile weapons labs. Because I will never forget that term. Me and one of my friends still joke about mobile weapons labs, and like, because it's just something you heard at that age, and you're like, dude, well, that's actually almost kind of cool. Like, eventually they made Breaking Bad, where he's got a mobile drug lab. I mean,
Right.
like that just sounds cool, like in a sense, but it's not a real thing they had. Like, but
Do you remember the photos of it?
oh my gosh. Oh, the photos and the aluminum tubes. You remember that could have been used for like 80 other things except the one thing that they said it was used for. And they're like, yep,
These people
mobile
got
weapons lab.
aluminum tubes.
Yeah, they could only
Dude,
be
imagine
used for
some-
this.
Right. Imagine some poor like metalsmith in like Somalia who just like accidentally made a cylindrical aluminum tube. And then the next day he was just like, drone strike. That motherfucker has aluminum tubes.
Yeah, dude, those are
Get his
dangerous,
ass.
man. And those really high quality mobile weapons labs that we had, we saw them. They're real.
Right.
Yeah, real intimidating.
His kid was trying to make like his dad fell asleep, the metalsmith, and his kid was just trying to make like a tunnel for his little toy cars to run through. Now I'm going to use daddy's metalsmith machine and make an aluminum tube. Bam! Whole family dead.
Oh man.
Good work, little man. You just killed your dad.
Oh man, yeah, there was just all these reasons, and like as soon as one fell through, they were right on it with another. Like, oh, they don't really
Right.
believe it about the WMDs. Well, let's just make up this false document saying they bought uranium to make
Right.
it seem like it. And like it was just one thing after another of like as soon as you were doubting, they're like, oh, we got this new cool piece of evidence. It's like, what is it? And it's like they just made it up on the spot. Like,
Oh yeah.
dude, Britain said like somewhere in Africa they're like buying uranium. Yeah, that was their yeah. Oh, do you have the documents to prove it? Oh, yeah. Hey, make that up real quick. Do you know anyone who
Right.
works there? I know a guy from 10 years ago. Put his name on there. They'll believe it.
Yeah.
like
He's good.
it's like they just
good
made
for
it up. Like crap, they're figuring it out. Let's just tell them this. Like
Make something up.
we found this
Yep.
other thing. Like, and I remember a lot hearing too of like how sophisticated these caves were.
Oh, dude, I can't believe. Yeah, the caves.
The caves, they got full like people in there, a staff, and they're cooking and eating and like developing weapons, and they're planning. They have computers and bathrooms in these caves, like as if
Right,
it's just some multi-million-dollar like underground bunker.
Did they do that one for Iraq too, or I can't even remember now.
Oh yeah, they did it in Iraq too, which is even cooler.
Because I remember the Taliban caves
Oh,
from
yeah.
Afghanistan, the compound, and it was like built into a mountain,
Yeah.
and they had giant garage doors to like move huge vehicles in and out of. And it's
So
just
at
like,
one point,
come on,
they tried to
guys.
say they were finding him in Iraq too. So it was like re-solidifying. That's why we came
Oh
here.
yeah, it's the connection.
Yeah, like, oh yeah, we're
Yeah.
finding those caves here, as if they are really building all these huge things in caves.
on.
Like, oh my god, the branding though. Like,
Come
I remember
on.
these
was
things
beautiful.
so clearly, still to this day. And I was, 12 to 15 when the bulk of that stuff happened, and it's like,
It's really
oh,
it's really some cartoon character villain level shit, like, yeah, they're living in these caves. You won't believe these caves. And they have mobile vehicles. It's kind of like the Batmobile, except this one makes ricin. And then I got one down the street that makes mustard gas, and then I've got one over there that's working on enriching uranium. So it's like,
well, yeah.
it's totally supervillain shit, and
Especially
that
when
actually
it
kind of
comes to,
leads me
like,
back.
Those highly volatile chemicals that are all used, and they're like, yeah, they're
Sloshing
driving around
around.
on these bumpy roads. Like, you ever seen how planes refuel? They'll just keep moving and they fill them up. Like, they made it seem
Right.
like
At this
such
point in time,
crazy
there's like
stuff.
4 there's like 4 actual roads remaining
Yeah.
in Iraq. So these guys are just like bahaing it through the desert on semi-trucks filled with explosive chemicals.
Yeah. And any of the chemicals they actually did find in Iraq were so old that they were not valuable at all to use anymore. Like, because chemicals like that have a shelf life.
Gave them.
So it was the ones we had given them prior. If you don't remember, back when we were like, yeah, Saddam, he's our dude.
He's our guy.
He's our guy. We're giving him these chemical weapons to use to commit atrocities. So after that, when we found those original weapons, we knew we gave him. We were like, look, he's got these precursors for chemical weapons that we gave him all these years ago that won't be useful anymore. But we got to go bomb them again now.
We got to.
Like, it just, I wish, like, that whole hindsight's 2020 wasn't always so much a thing. Because, like, looking back now versus how people felt in the time is such a different thing. Because you're so desperate to feel safe in your own home that, like, it's so easy to believe whatever they tell you next. Where now I'm like, how did anyone believe any of this shit? Like, but like in that moment though, when your fear is there, like you just watch 2 planes fly into the 2 towers, a plane fly into the Pentagon. Like, this is happening in your own country. Like, it's just wild how that fear changes your rational thinking. Like, you'll believe anything if you think it makes you safe. And I definitely believe our country has learned that, whoever's running it, over the years of, like, keep them in fear, they'll do whatever we say.
Yep, absolutely. Definitely. I think that that probably covers all of the myths, at least that that I've heard recently. There were certainly more throughout the years, but I think these are the ones that have somehow survived. And if you think of any, let us know. You know, comment. What do you say here? What do the kids say? Comment, like, subscribe.
Yeah, like, smash the like button. Which we don't even have a like button on here, do we?
We did get our first sponsor though. I don't know if I told you this yet.
I'm getting something ready. I'm sorry.
We're
I have a clip
we're actually
to play.
Sponsored. That's good. I need to talk. We got sponsored by Disney. Actually, I don't know. I was holding this back. We were sponsored. We're part of the Marvel. It's a new Marvel podcast universe they're putting together, which is pretty cool. And we have to be a villain though. So we're gonna have to change the name to like Doctor from Right to Red. That's like a Marvel villainy name, right? Which is fine. And then what else? Since we're the villains, we can talk about like good stuff all the time and like how to make society better and like fixing things. But at the end, we have to bomb an orphanage at the end of every episode. Just so that people know we're the villain in the movie.
Well, yeah.
You know, yeah.
But like the whole rest of the movie, you'll be rooting for us. But like right at the end, it's like, hey, remember, this is the bad guy though.
Yeah. So
and how do you know it's the bad guy? The rich guy told me.
They're giving us like $50 an episode though to bomb, an orphanage. So
and
it's kind of cool.
It's not worth as much as Eric Clapton's Baby.
No,
but
we get there.
We'll get there. Yeah. We'll find the more valuable children at some point.
Yeah, we'll find a bigger sponsor than Disney.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know they have early ties to Nazis, but it's just not enough for me.
It's over now.
I need more.
Yeah. Oh, you're ramping it up.
I mean, no.
Yeah.
I mean,
no.
I don't like that part. I do want to just play you this audio though, because it's my favorite thing in the world sometimes, even though it shouldn't be.
We must stop the terror. I call upon all nations to do everything they can to stop these terrorist killers. Thank you. Now watch this drive.
We know you could've stayed home, just cried and cussed. May or your guns go off if it's time to bust. May or they tanks have time to rust. They got the armies turning bullets into gold. They got the hookers turning tricks into cold. And every time the police kicks in the dough, an angel gas breaks dips in the O. And even if a D-boy flips in my O, it ain't enough to buy shit anymore. Sleep in the doorway, piss on the floor. Look in the sky, wait for missiles to show. It's finna blow, cause they got the TV, we got the truth. They own the judges and we got the proof. We got hella people, they got helicopters. They got the bombs and we got the guillotine. We got the guillotine, you better run. We got the guillotine. We got the guillotine, you better run. We got the guillotine. We got the guillotine, you better run. We got the guillotine. We got the guillotine, you better run. Don't talk about it. I show. Be about it. I know. Don't talk about it. I show. Be about it. I know. I just spit the dope lines. I don't snort them. Tell the boss to call police to escort them. You don't ride out them lines, you just quote them. Get offline, plug into this modem. No, you can't outvote them. The rules are still golden. On the jewels we holdin' if we guardin' our scrotum. If you press the ear to the turf that is stolen, you can hear the sound of limitations exploding. Please, sir, may we have another portion with children of the beast that dodge the abortion. Neck plate firm between the floor and the portion. When shut your shit down, don't call it extortion. Caution, we're coming for your head. So call the feds and get files to shred. Every textbook read said bring you the bread. But guess what, we got you instead. We got the guillotine. We got the guillotine.